Right. The last lecture in this series will deal with something called liquidated damages. Liquidated damages is primarily a mechanism whereby parties to a contract decide at the time when they are getting into the contract, they decide at that time that if ever there is a breach by either of them, then instead of going to the court and getting their compensation determined by the court, the parties decide that compensation in the contract itself. So while they are drafting the contract, while they are agreeing on the terms of the contract, they will also agree on what compensation should be paid by either of them were there to be a breach. So if A and B had their contract and were A to breach the contract would itself specify that A would pay to B a certain agreed sum. Similarly, if B were to breach the contract would provide very specifically, very expressly, that in such a case B would pay an agreed sum to A. The benefit of doing this, the benefit of agreeing on a quantified amount in the contract, is that tomorrow when breach does happen, you don't have to go to the court. You don't have to waste your time, your money, the whole hassle of going through the court process just to simply get the compensation from the other party. You already will have set up a mechanism within the contract whereby the compensation would already have been spelled out and the obligation to pay that compensation would already be in the contract. This mechanism or such a term in the contract is called a liquidated damages clause. You have liquidated your damages by yourself without having to go to the court. This generally is a good thing to do. It's advisable. When we are drafting contracts for our clients, we usually advise them that if possible, they should liquidate damages. But of course, it's not always possible. Certainly in contracts that are long-term contracts, it's very difficult for the parties sitting today to peer into the future and try and see what loss they potentially may suffer 10 years down the road. It's very difficult. It's much easier in contracts that are perhaps short-term contracts, 3-month contracts, 6 months contract, or a year perhaps. But yeah, so where it is possible, the parties should consider having a liquidated damages clause. It will save them time, energy, hassle, costs later on. And law encourages this because it takes burden off the courts. Courts are already overburdened with cases. So anything to take that burden off their shoulders, they would happily accept it. So law encourages parties to have liquidated damages clause if they can. It's not an obligation, but if they can, they should. Subject to one caveat. And that one caveat is primarily the topic of this lecture. That you can have your liquidated damages clause, but law says be fair. You should not take advantage of your superior bargaining strength. What that means is that if a contract is entered into between two parties, it is possible that both the parties are of equal bargaining strength, in which case they will both look out for their own interests. They will decide on what's best for them and that's what they will include in the contract. There we don't have to worry about it too much because they both can take care of their interests. But some contracts are entered into by parties that are not on equal footing. Sometimes one party is in a superior bargaining strength. So that party would be in a dominant position. And so while we cannot say that the other party is entering the contract under some duress, under some threat, but certainly the other party would be handicapped in terms of its negotiating prowess. And so therefore it will probably go along with whatever the dominant party is saying. The risk in that, especially in the context of liquidated damages, is that the dominant party may require a certain liquidated damages clause to be imposed, to be incorporated into the contract, which would only suit the dominant party but not the innocent party. So for example, the dominant party might require a clause to be there in the contract which says if the dominant party breaches the contract, there will be no compensation. But if the weaker party breaches the contract, the weaker party will have to pay 100,000 rupees, for instance. The law does not like that. The law wants parties to have liquidated damages clause, but the law does not want one party to dominate the other unfairly. And so therefore there is a limit on what you can do with this liquidated damages clause, and the limit primarily is that it must not be penal in nature. What does that mean, that it must not be penal in nature? The courts have described it as meaning that the liquidated damages clause should not have such an effect on the position of a party that is completely out of proportion with any legitimate interests that were being protected by the liquidated damages clause. That is to say that when we are agreeing on a liquidated damages clause, we should only look out for our legitimate interest, and the amount that we both agree on should be proportionate to those legitimate interests. So if I am set to lose more in case of breach by you, then it's only fair that my liquidated damages clause, the amount that you are being asked to pay to me in case of breach should be higher. That makes sense. If I'll suffer more, I should be compensated more. And to that extent, there is nothing wrong with the contract saying that you pay me 100,000 if you breach and I only pay you 50,000 if I breach. That's fine. As long as I can show that the reason why I kept 100,000 for myself and 50,000 only for you was because my legitimate interests, which I was seeking to protect, were more sensitive in nature than the interests that you were trying to protect. As long as the court is satisfied that the arrangement is a fair one, as long as the court is satisfied that I am not using my dominant position unfairly, and this liquidated damages clause that we both have agreed on in the contract, is basically a fair arrangement, it's not penal in nature, the court will accept it. The question, of course, why am I saying court? The whole point of liquidated damages clause was so that we didn't have to go to the court. Well, the reason I'm mentioning court is because even with liquidated damages clause, there is a possibility that you don't pay me that 100,000 that you agreed to pay me. So we had written it in the contract, but you're not paying it to me now. What can I do? I'll have to go to the court. But this time I'm not going to the court asking the court to do the whole remoteness of damages or measure of damages. I'm not asking the court to determine the compensation itself. I'm just asking the court. I'll just show the court this liquidated damages clause and I'll say, look, we had agreed on this amount of 100,000. There is a breach of contract. The other party is not paying me 100,000. That's it. The court will only then have to decide if it's a fair clause, if the sum of 100,000 is not penal in nature. As long as the court is satisfied that I did not take advantage of any dominant position that I might have had when we were drafting that contract, the court will order you to pay me 100,000. So the benefit that I get with a liquidated damages clause, as long as it's a fair clause, it's not penal in nature, the benefit I get is that even if the matter does end up in a court, the court will not be undertaking that entire long exercise of first seeing whether the loss was naturally arising or not, whether it was foreseeable or not, and then expectation interest basis, reliance interest basis, and then mitigate. None of that. The court will simply see whether this 100,000 amount, and 100,000 of course is an example, whether this amount was penal or not. Was it fairly negotiated or not? Is it proportionate to the legitimate interest that I'm seeking to protect? If yes, that's it. This can be done in one hearing, one day. And if it is not penal in nature, you will be asked to pay me 100,000. Right. So this completes our discussion of damages. We've also seen equitable remedies, and before that we saw breach and the different types of breach and the other means in which contracts are discharged, and that essentially was this whole spectrum of remedies and breach of contract.